Alright, we are ready to begin our next lesson. This lesson is actually the first lesson in a new unit, and the unit that we're going to be covering is going to be graphs and patterns. So we're going to learn how to graph different data sets and then see if we can identify patterns or trends that's in that data. You may have noticed sometimes on a map, especially a map of a large area, say a country, that there are lines that go across that map. If they go sideways across the map, we call them lines of latitude. If they go up and down on the map, we call them lines of longitude. We use these lines on maps in order to help us identify locations on the map. So at certain points where these lines cross, we can say that a certain location is identified by that point. Alright, so here you see a map of the United States, and you see in red that there are lines going up and down and lines going side by side, and if you look along the edge of the map, you'll see that they have numbers on them. And we can use those numbers and where those lines are to identify certain locations, in this case in the United States of America. We are going to use the same idea using a coordinate grid in order to identify certain values on a graph. And so we're going to talk about that next, how we do that. First, we're going to discuss some new terminology that we're going to be using as we try to identify these points on our graph. The first one we've already talked about. It's in our learning goal, a coordinate grid. And simply a coordinate grid is a pair of perpendicular lines. Perpendicular means that one of those lines is going to be going side to side. The other line is going to be going straight up and down. So they meet at a 90-degree angle. You may hear me sometimes talk about a coordinate plane. They're the same thing. Coordinate grid and coordinate plane mean the same thing. We're going to have a x-axis. That's one of the lines that makes up our coordinate grid, and the x-axis is the one that goes side to side or horizontally. We're also going to have a y-axis. That's the second line, and that's the line that goes up and down on our coordinate grid. Where those two lines meet is called the origin, and it has a special point. It's 0, 0. And then we're going to use that coordinate grid to identify values called ordered pairs. And ordered pairs are points on the coordinate grid. They have an x-coordinate and a y-coordinate. And the biggest thing that students get messed up on is by putting them in the wrong order. And so you need to remember that the x-coordinate is always going to come first, and the y-coordinate is going to come second. And the way that I remember that is I think of the running long jump. You're going to run first. That means you're going to go across, and then you're going to jump second, which means you're going to go up. So you run, and then you jump. Go across, and then up. The x-coordinate, that's just the number or the value that represents how far you went horizontally or to the side. And the y-coordinate is how far you go up. Okay, so you can see on the notes I've gone ahead and drawn a coordinate plane or a coordinate grid. You see that we have the two lines, and I've gone ahead and identified them for you. We have the x-axis right here, that's the side-to-side line. We have the y-axis up here, and that's the up and down line. Notice that I've numbered them across the bottom and across the side. And the important thing here, and this is another part where students often make mistakes, is when you number them, you need to number them on the line. Okay? Students often want to number in the space. And we don't want to do that when we're doing coordinate grids, because the lines are what represents the value, not the spaces. And over here I've identified the origin, that's 0, 0. The way that we would write that is we would put a parentheses, the x-axis, which is 0, a comma, and then the y-axis, which is also 0, and then another parentheses. And so this is how we're going to represent our ordered pairs, using parentheses and a comma, and then the values, the x-axis first, and then the y-axis. Alright, we are ready to work some sample problems about how we're going to use that coordinate grid. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to plot some points. So the first point that we're going to plot is 5, 7. That means the x value is 5 and the y value is 7. And notice that there's a capital A there. In order to help identify the points, we're going to give them names, and we usually use capital letters for their names. Okay, so I have written down the first sample problem. We're going to label point A, and it's going to be at 5, 7. So we're going to use our running long jump analogy, and we're going to go over 5 places. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're going to jump or go up 7 places. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And where those lines meet, we're going to draw a point. And since we said that this point is going to be letter A, we're going to write the letter A next to it. So we have just plotted point A at 5, 7. Okay, we're going to plot 2 more points on our grid. We're going to plot points B and point C. Okay, so I've written down the 2 more points that we're going to plot. Point B is at 6, 2. So we're going to start here at the origin and count over 6 places. And then we're going to go up 2. And since that's point B, we're going to label it with a B. Our third sample problem is point C, and it's located at 9, 9. So we're going to run all the way down to the 9, and then we're going to jump up all the way to the other 9 and plot the point at 9, 9. And again, this is point C, and so we're going to label it with a capital C. Alright, the second thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to be able to look at points that are already plotted on a coordinate grid and identify where they are located. So we're going to look at a coordinate grid that have points F, G, and H, and then we're going to identify where those points are. So here's our coordinate grid. We have the points F, G, and H, and we need to identify where they are on the coordinate grid. So we're going to look at F first. We're going to see that you have to count over 2 places in order to line up with the F. So that means the X value is going to be 2. And then you have to go up 9 spaces, and so the Y value is going to be 8. And so we write the ordered pair 2, 8 in order to represent the location of point F. Let's go to point G. In order to go over, or in order to line up with point G, we're going to have to go over 6 spaces and go up 5. So we run and then jump. Okay, so we go over 6 spaces, so the X coordinate is 6, and then we go up 5 spaces, and so the Y coordinate is 5. Let's do our last sample problem. Point H is 3 over, and it's 3 up, and so we're going to use the same value for both of them. 3 is the X coordinate, and 3 is the Y coordinate. And so each of these ordered pairs identifies the location of each of these points. All right, so that concludes our lesson for today. Go ahead and go on to Moodle, do the practice problems on Moodle. Once you finish that, then come back to your notes and rate yourself using our scale. How comfortable are you? Where are you on our scale? And plotting and identifying ordered pairs on a coordinate grid, and go ahead and write that next to your heading in your notes. If you have any questions, please bring them to class tomorrow and we'll go over them then. Thanks and have a great evening.